He wasn't the smartest. He didn't come from wealth. And if you had met him 10 years ago, you wouldn't have looked twice. He worked a job he hated, lived paycheck to paycheck, and every morning he woke up feeling behind, like life was something happening to him, not through him. But something changed. Not overnight, not with a grand resolution. It started with a pen, a notebook, and a 10-minute morning habit. Each dawn, before checking his phone, before the chaos of the world kicked in, he wrote, not a to-do list, not a diary. He wrote down what he needed to hear, simple truths that reminded him of who he was and who he could become. I am capable. I shape my reality. My path is clear. No one saw it. No one applauded. But day after day, those words became bricks, and he, the man who once felt lost, began to build a life with them. Now, a decade later, he's successful by any definition. But when asked how he did it, he doesn't talk about strategy. He talks about mornings, about rituals, about the power of talking to yourself with intention, before the world gets its hands on your mind. And that story, it's not just his, it can be yours. Because the most powerful conversation you'll have today won't happen in a meeting or a comment thread, it will happen in your own mind. It's the voice that whispers before the noise begins. And if you don't guide that voice, it will be hijacked by fear, by doubt, by the past. You see, Stoicism isn't just about endurance. It's about authorship. Writing your own story, moment by moment, choice by choice, thought by thought. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So what color are you choosing each morning? If you wake up and say nothing, the old patterns speak for you. The self-judgment, the anxiety, the weight of 1,000 unfinished yesterdays. But if you wake up and speak truth, even just one sentence at a time, you begin to shift. You stop reacting and start responding. This video is not a list. It's a ritual, a toolkit, a moment of clarity before the current of the day tries to sweep you away. We'll explore 10 simple, powerful affirmations, not just motivational fluff, but words rooted in Stoic discipline, backed by psychological truth, and refined through real life. Each one is a stepping stone. Each one is a mirror. And by the end of this journey, you'll have more than just good advice. You'll have a blueprint, a daily practice for anchoring your thoughts, strengthening your mindset, and reclaiming authorship of your life. Because in the end, your success won't come from luck. It will come from what you tell yourself when no one else is watching. It starts with a whisper. It becomes a mindset. And over time, it becomes you. Let's begin. Title 1. I am capable. Stoic philosophy. You weren't born knowing how to walk. You fell again and again. And yet, no one called you a failure, because everyone understood falling was part of becoming. So why, as adults, do we forget that? Why do we question our ability to rise just because the path feels steep? Every challenge whispers doubt. Every obstacle tests your belief. But beneath it all, a deeper truth remains. You are capable. Not because life is easy, not because you've mastered everything, but because you're still standing. Because you woke up today, and you chose to try. That matters more than you think. Too often, people mistake capability for perfection. They think being capable means being flawless, fast, or fearless. It doesn't. Being capable means showing up. It means asking questions. It means stumbling forward with curiosity and grit, even when you don't have all the answers. The Stoics didn't believe in instant mastery. They believed in discipline, in persistence, in progress through repetition and reflection. As Epictetus once said, no great thing is created suddenly. That includes you. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You become ready by beginning. Look back. Think of a moment when you thought, I can't do this. And yet, you did. Maybe it was a job you weren't qualified for, a conversation you were afraid to have, a crisis you didn't think you'd survive, but you did. You adapted, you endured, you proved, quietly and without applause, that you were stronger than your fear. That's what being capable means. It's not loud. It doesn't beg for validation. It doesn't always feel brave. But it is. Deeply. Now ask yourself, what if I approached this day believing I was capable? What would I attempt? What would I stop avoiding? And most importantly, what would I finally give myself permission to grow through? Because growth is not an accident, it's a decision. And capability is not something granted, it's something claimed. You claim it when you take action. You claim it when you speak your truth. You claim it when you look at the mountain ahead and say, I may not know how, but I will learn. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You will find strength, not in avoiding hard things, but in walking toward them, one deliberate step at a time. So today, tell yourself, I am capable, not because I feel it every moment, but because I act like it anyway. And slowly, steadily, those actions become evidence. That evidence becomes belief, and belief becomes your new baseline. You are not defined by the doubts you feel. You are defined by what you do in spite of them. So go. Begin, even if it's small, especially if it's small, because the capable version of you is already here, waiting for you to trust him. Title 2. I shape my reality. A man once told me, the storm ruined my day. But it wasn't the storm. It was the way he chose to see the storm. Every morning, life hands you a deck of cards. Some days you get sunshine, other days clouds and chaos. But the game you play, that's yours to decide. You don't get to command the wind, but you do control the sails. That's the essence of this simple but powerful Stoic affirmation. I shape my reality. Not because you're trying to deny difficulty, but because you're refusing to be its prisoner. You shape your reality the moment you decide how you interpret the world. And your interpretation, it becomes your experience. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. He wasn't talking about poetic symbolism. He was describing a truth that modern psychology now confirms. Your internal narrative, the voice you let run in your mind, tints everything you see. Lose your job? One man calls it the end. Another calls it the beginning. Get rejected? One sinks. The other rises, sharper, with new insight. It's not the event, it's the lens. And you, my friend, are the one holding the camera. Picture this. You're stuck in traffic, you're late, the clock ticks, horns blare. You feel the frustration creeping in. Now stop. Pause. Breathe. Is the traffic something you can control? Number. But can you reframe it? Maybe it's 15 minutes you didn't expect. Time to think, to listen to a podcast, to practice patience in a world that glorifies rush. That's shaping your reality. Because if you don't, someone else will. And the world has no shortage of people, headlines and algorithms eager to define what you should fear, chase, or feel. So, shape it yourself. Ask better questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But what is this trying to teach me? Not, why can't I catch a break, but where can I shift my focus? This isn't wishful thinking. It's Stoic discipline. There's a man I once knew, mid-50s, laid off after decades in a steady job. He could have drowned in bitterness. Instead, he took long walks every morning, journaled like a monk, and eventually started mentoring younger workers online. He said, I couldn't change what happened, but I could choose who I became because of it. That's shaping reality. You don't pretend the fire isn't burning. You walk through it with eyes open, letting it refine you instead of consume you. Here's a practice. Every time something frustrates you this week, ask yourself, is my reaction helping or hurting? Is it moving you closer to peace or dragging you further into reactivity? Your reality isn't just built by events. It's sculpted by your choices, moment by moment. So when you wake tomorrow, Tell yourself with clarity and conviction, I shape my reality, not with delusion, but with discipline, not by ignoring pain, but by deciding it will shape you, not break you. The world outside you is loud, but the world inside, that's yours. And once you reclaim that power, you'll begin to see you were never at the mercy of circumstances. You were simply waiting to step into the mindset that changes everything. You hold the brush. Now paint. Title 3. My path is clear. It doesn't always start with clarity. Sometimes it starts with a fog, a feeling, a quiet ache that whispers, this can't be it. You wake up, you follow the routine, you meet the deadlines, smile at the small talk, and yet something feels missing. That's the soul tapping on your shoulder asking, are you walking your path or just wandering? But here's the paradox. Your path rarely appears all at once. It reveals itself in fragments, one courageous step at a time. That's why this affirmation matters. My path is clear, not because every twist is mapped, but because you've chosen to walk with intention. Clarity doesn't come from having every answer. It comes from knowing what you stand for and refusing to betray it. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He didn't mean perfection. He meant purpose. Begin with your values, and let your values become the compass. When you know what kind of person you want to be, when you decide your life will reflect discipline, compassion, resilience, then the noise of the world quiets. Your path begins to form beneath your feet. Think of it like walking through dense woods. The trail isn't always marked. But when you point your feet in the direction of meaning, the brush parts. Not all at once, but enough for your next step. Let me tell you about James. He was 58, recently retired. For the first time in years, he had no clock-in, no quarterly goals, no supervisor telling him where to be. And that freedom? It terrified him. He told me, I don't know what to do with my life now. But instead of rushing to fill the void, he started small. He wrote down his values, integrity, growth, helping others. He asked, what's one thing I can do today that aligns with these? Some days it was mentoring a former co-worker, others volunteering at a local shelter. And slowly his path unfolded, not through grand plans but small, meaningful action. Now he wakes up with direction. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped looking for the perfect path and started walking the right one. So ask yourself, what matters most to me? What do I refuse to compromise on, even when no one's watching? Clarity is born there, and it sharpens every time you say no to what distracts you, and yes to what defines you. It sharpens when you stop comparing your timeline to others and start honoring your own. It sharpens when you realize your life doesn't need to impress the crowd, it just needs to align with your soul. Here's something practical. Each morning ask, what is one action I can take today that reflects my values? And each night ask, did I move toward or away from the person I'm trying to become? These two questions, honestly answered, can change everything. Because the truth is, you don't need the full map. You just need the courage to take the next right step. So say it again. My path is clear. Not because it's easy, but because you've chosen to see through the fog. And when you do that, life shifts. Decisions get simpler, distractions lose their pull, and you begin to walk with the quiet conviction of someone who knows they're no longer chasing clarity. They're creating it with every step they take. Title 4. I Grow Stronger. Daily growth doesn't come wrapped in fireworks, it comes quietly, tucked into everyday moments, in the decision to get up after a restless night, in the pause before reacting to someone's anger, in the choice to show up even when you'd rather disappear. That's what I Grow Stronger daily truly means. Not that you wake up every morning with heroic energy, but that you're training your spirit with each small act of intention. The Stoics saw hardship not as a detour, but as the curriculum. Marcus Aurelius wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the obstacle isn't blocking your path, it is your path. And facing it doesn't just test you, it transforms you. Let's make this real. You wake up and your plans unravel, someone cancels, the deadline moves, your kid gets sick, or your body feels heavier than usual. Old you might have cursed the day. New you breathe, adjust, move forward. That's strength. Not dramatic, not glamorous, but powerful. I once met a man named Tom, early 60s, widowed, quiet, used to work as a contractor. He told me he never thought of himself as resilient until life gave him no choice. After losing his wife, the house was too quiet, too still. But instead of drowning in that stillness, he did one thing each day. He started building birdhouses, not because it solved anything, but because it gave his hands something to do, his mind something to focus on, his heart something to rebuild around. 6 months later, he had a garage full of them and a waiting list in town. He said, "I didn't get stronger all at once. I just kept moving." That's the heartbeat of Stoic strength, small, repeated effort, especially on the days when it's hardest. You don't become mentally strong from reading books or posting quotes. You become strong when you keep your word to yourself. When you take the walk, when you sit in silence instead of arguing, when you do the work even when no one's watching. Growth is built in private, revealed in public, but you don't do it for applause, you do it to own your life. Here's the shift. Stop asking, "Am I there yet?" Start asking, "Did I get better today?" Title 5. I commit to excellence. It's easy to confuse excellence with perfection, but they are not the same. Perfection is a mirage that paralyzes. Excellence is a practice that liberates. To commit to excellence is not to say, "I must get it all right." It is to say, "I will give it all I've got." And that makes all the difference. In a culture obsessed with speed and shortcuts, excellence is rebellion. When others cut corners, you slow down and do it right. When others say, "That's good enough," you ask, "Is this the best I can offer?" Not because anyone is watching, but because you are. The Stoics believed that character is revealed in the smallest of details. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself. In other words, don't do things halfway. Don't speak without care. Don't live by default. Excellence is not a performance. It's a way of being. Think about this. Do you take the time to truly listen when someone speaks to you? Do you wipe down the counter, not because someone asked, but because it reflects your standard? Do you follow through, even on promises made only to yourself? That's excellence. And it shows up in the places no one ever applauds. Like when you write that extra email to clarify something, or refold the laundry just because it didn't sit right the first time, or hold your tongue when anger rises, choosing poise over pettiness. In those moments, you're not just doing tasks, you're shaping your identity. Excellence builds something inside you that no one can take. A quiet pride, a grounded integrity, a deep respect for the kind of person you're becoming. I once met a barista in a small roadside coffee shop in Montana. The place was quiet, barely 2 or 3 customers at a time. But this man, probably mid-50s, made each cup of coffee like it was a work of art. Measured, balanced, intentional. I asked him, "Do you always make it like this?" He smiled and said, "Why would I make it any other way?" That's it. He wasn't making coffee. He was practicing character. Excellence wasn't in the task, it was in him. This is the Stoic way. Treat every action as a reflection of your inner life. Not because you expect a reward, but because your actions are your legacy. So when you tell yourself, "I commit to excellence," you're not just promising to work harder. You're choosing to show up fully, to care deeply, to live as if every choice matters, because it does. And when you carry that mindset into your day, into your job, your relationships, your quiet moments alone, you become someone others trust. But more importantly, you become someone you trust. You may not always win. You won't always get recognition. But you'll go to bed knowing you didn't coast. You showed up. You did the work. You gave your best. And in a world that constantly invites you to do less, that, my friend, is a revolutionary act. So repeat it again, not with pressure, but with quiet power. I commit to excellence. Because you deserve a life built on effort, intention, and quiet mastery. Title 6. Excuses do not define me. Let's be honest, we've all used them. I don't have the time. I'm too tired. I'll do it when I'm ready. It's just not the right moment. Excuses. Soft words that dress up hard truths. And yet they feel so reasonable, don't they? They comfort us when we're scared. They protect our pride when we fail to act. But make no mistake, excuses are not protection. They are cages, and the most dangerous ones are the ones we whisper to ourselves so often. We start to believe them. The Stoics warned us about this. They saw how easy it was to rationalize, to delay, to mask fear as logic. As Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And excuses, however elegant they sound, are often just avoidance in disguise, avoidance of responsibility, avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of growth. Here's the brutal truth. Excuses steal from you, not just your time or your progress, but your self-trust. Every time you say "I can't" when you mean "I won't," you weaken your own word, and over time, that inner voice, it stops believing itself. But there's good news, because the opposite is also true. Every time you act instead of excuse, you build strength. You build momentum. You build the kind of man or woman you'd want beside you in a storm. I once knew a friend, bright, thoughtful, full of potential. But he lived inside the fortress of his own excuses. "I'm not ready yet. It's just not the right time." He said those words so often, they became part of his identity. And nothing changed. Until one day something snapped. He stopped trying to feel ready, and he started moving anyway. That's when the shift happens. When you stop waiting for motivation and start showing up with discipline, not because it feels good, but because it's who you've decided to be. You don't need to crush every obstacle today. You just need to take one small, inconvenient, necessary action. Because action, no matter how humble, builds belief. Excuses, they build regret. Let's be clear. This isn't about beating yourself up, it's about being radically honest, catching yourself in the act of avoiding, and choosing differently. Next time you hear your inner voice say, "I can't go to the gym today," interrupt it. "Can I do 10 push-ups at home instead?" When you think, "I don't have time to start that side project," ask, "Do I have 15 focused minutes to brainstorm a name?" These micro movements matter, because each time you act instead of excuse, you rewire your mind to believe in your own power. Remember, excuses don't define you. Your actions do. And every moment is a new vote for the person you're becoming. So, from this day forward, let your behavior speak louder than your doubts. Let your commitment whisper through your consistency. And let this affirmation guide you, steady and strong. Excuses do not define me. Because you're done being a prisoner of later. You're here to live, to move, to lead, and that begins right now. And that, Title 7. I am designed for greatness. Somewhere along the way, someone may have told you that you were ordinary, that your dreams were too big, that your talents weren't enough. Maybe it was a teacher, a parent, a boss, or maybe it was you. But let me remind you of something the world has quietly tried to make you forget. You are not average. You were never meant to be. Greatness is not reserved for the lucky or the chosen. It is built, patiently, deliberately, by those who are willing to believe that their life can mean something more. Stoicism teaches us that human nature is designed for virtue, for excellence, for rising above animal impulse and tapping into our highest self. You were born with the architecture of greatness already etched into your being, but just like a muscle, that potential needs effort. It must be trained, sharpened, federal, not with ego, but with discipline, with purpose, with daily courage to act even when nobody is watching, because greatness is not a title, it's a decision. You see it in the father who wakes up early to work a job he hates to provide for his kids. in the woman who leaves a toxic relationship and starts over at 45, in the veteran who comes home with scars and chooses healing over silence. They aren't celebrated on magazine covers, but they are extraordinary because they choose to rise. You are capable of the same. The Stoics never promised ease. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I am rising to do the work of a human being.'" Why? Because human beings, at our best, are creators, builders, lifters of burdens. We are meant to move through life with meaning, not just motion. And every choice you make today is a brushstroke on the canvas of your legacy. You don't need applause to be great. You don't need permission. You need one thing: conviction. A belief that your existence matters. That your words, your work, your quiet persistence make a dent in the world. Greatness begins when you stop waiting for the perfect opportunity and start creating the opportunity through your actions. It begins when you stop saying, "Who am I to do this?" and start saying, "Who am I not to?" Yes, there will be failures. Yes, you will fall short. That's part of it. But falling doesn't disprove your potential. It's how your strength gets forged. And let's be real. We live in a world that profits off your doubt. A culture that thrives on convincing you to stay small, distracted, dependent. The moment you stand tall and say, "I am designed for greatness," you're rejecting that noise. You're reclaiming the narrative. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're awake. You're tired of shrinking. Tired of hiding behind excuses, wounds, and what-ifs. You're ready to take your rightful place in this world as someone who does the hard thing, the right thing, the meaningful thing. So when you wake up tomorrow, before the world has a chance to convince you otherwise, say it again. "I am designed for greatness," and then prove it. One quiet, powerful choice at a time. Title 8. External opinions do not sway me. It's one of the quietest prisons we walk into, living for what others think, and we don't even notice it at first. It begins in childhood, with the gold star, the praise, the pressure to be good. Then it matures into seeking approval from bosses, friends, neighbors, strangers on the internet. Before we know it, we're not living for ourselves anymore. We're curating an image, not a life. Performing for applause we didn't ask for, while slowly silencing our own voice. But here's what the Stoics would ask you. What does it profit you to gain their approval if you lose yourself in the process? Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Let that sink in. We know ourselves more deeply than anyone. We carry our own pain, dreams, and truth. And yet, we hand the steering wheel of our self-worth to people who haven't walked a single mile in our shoes. Why? Because we forget what matters. Because we fear being misunderstood, disliked, rejected. But my friend, those who live in fear of others' opinions never live freely. You must choose. You can live to be seen as acceptable, or you can live to be authentic. One leads to exhaustion, the other leads to freedom. Because let's be honest, people will talk regardless. They will misunderstand you, project onto you, create stories about you based on the narrow window they see. That's not your burden, that's theirs. You are not obligated to shrink yourself to soothe their discomfort. You're not responsible for carrying the weight of their expectations. Your job is to live with integrity, to align your actions with your values, not their opinions. And the irony, when you do that, the right people start to respect you more. Not because you catered to them, but because you stood your ground. You showed them what it looks like to be unshaken. And in a world full of noise and insecurity, that kind of presence speaks volumes. So what does it look like in practice? It's walking out of a room where your boundaries weren't respected without offering an apology. It's smiling calmly when someone mocks your choices because you know they're not rooted in understanding. It's saying, no to a path everyone approves of, because you hear a deeper yes inside your soul. And no, it's not always easy. But every time you hold your ground, every time you make a decision that honors your truth over public opinion, you build something priceless: self-respect. And that's the kind of strength that doesn't shout, it doesn't need defending, it just is. So the next time someone questions your path, the next time you're tempted to bend just to please, pause and remind yourself, external opinions do not sway me, because I know who I am. And I didn't come this far just to become what someone else thinks I should be. I came to live fully, freely, authentically. Let the world talk. You've got a life to build. Title 9. I embrace the present moment. We're always chasing something, aren't we? The next deadline, the next version of ourselves, the next approval, the next opportunity. And while we're busy sprinting toward a tomorrow that hasn't come, we miss the only thing that ever truly belonged to us. Now. The present moment. It slips through our fingers like sand, not because it's elusive, but because we're too distracted to hold it. We replay conversations from last week. We rehearse failures from 10 years ago. Or we time travel forward, worrying about bills, aging, success, the what-ifs of a future not yet written. But the Stoics were clear. You cannot live in a memory. You cannot act in a day that hasn't come. All you ever have is this breath, this heartbeat, this moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, confine yourself to the present. Why? Because the present is where peace lives, where clarity emerges, where action becomes possible. The past is a teacher, not a home. The future is a horizon, not a destination. And only in the now can you move forward. So what does it look like to truly embrace the present moment? It's choosing to slow down when your mind wants to rush. It's noticing the feel of warm coffee in your hands instead of scrolling while you sip. It's looking someone in the eye when they speak to you instead of thinking about your next response. It's remembering that this walk, this laugh, this task in front of you matters. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And that's all we ever truly get. Real moments, passing by quietly. Most of them unnoticed until they're gone. But if you can pause just for a moment and be here, you reclaim your life from the noise, from the regrets behind you, from the fears ahead of you. You become present, and presence is power. When you live in the moment, you stop carrying the weight of what no longer is, and the anxiety of what might never be. You start responding with intention. You start listening with empathy. You start showing up, not just physically, but soulfully. Even joy changes, because joy doesn't always live in big moments. Sometimes it lives in the way sunlight hits your floor, in a stranger's smile, in the quiet exhale of finishing something you didn't think you could. This is not about pretending life is easy. It's about not abandoning your life while it's still happening. So tomorrow, when your mind races back to old wounds or forward to what-ifs, take a breath. Put your hand on your chest. Feel your pulse. Remind yourself, I embrace the present moment. Title 10. I control my emotions. You are not your anger. You are not your anxiety. You are not your fear, your jealousy, your bitterness. These are weather systems passing through. But you are the sky beneath it all, still, expansive, unshaken. It doesn't always feel that way, of course. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A colleague takes credit for your work. Your child says something cruel in a moment of frustration. And instantly, something flares. That heat in your chest. That fire rising in your throat. That sharp edge creeping into your words. Emotion is fast. It's powerful. But Stoicism teaches us it is not in control unless we hand over the reins. You see, the Stoics didn't teach emotional suppression. They taught emotional sovereignty. As Epictetus put it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. That means it's not the insult that ruins your day. It's your decision to let it live inside you. It's not the setback that breaks you. It's your belief that you can't rise again. You always have a choice, not in what happens, but in how you meet it. Think of the greatest leaders, the mentors you respect, the elders who carry themselves with quiet strength. They don't react like matches struck in the dark. They pause, they consider, they choose. And in that pause lies your power. Pause before you respond to disrespect. Pause before you let fear make your decisions. Pause before you let a bad moment become a bad day. That's not weakness. That's mastery. You're not a victim of emotion. You're the commander of your internal world. And every time you choose discipline over impulse, clarity over chaos, you reinforce that control. Now, does that mean you never feel angry, sad, overwhelmed? Number to be human is to feel. But Stoic wisdom gives you a compass. You feel the emotion. You acknowledge it. But you don't let it steer the ship. You don't lash out and call it honesty. You don't shut down and call it strength. You feel, and then you choose. That choice makes all the difference, because how you respond shapes everything. Your relationships, your integrity, your self-respect. And when you choose with intention, you stop being at the mercy of others. They can provoke you, but they can't control you. They can shout, criticize, gossip. But you stay calm, because calm is your power. Think of it like training. You don't become emotionally disciplined overnight. It's a daily practice. Like lifting weights for your soul. You journal through anger instead of texting back in rage. You take a walk instead of snapping. You breathe instead of breaking. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself. Not to be perfect, but to be present with your feelings, and still choose what serves you. That's emotional maturity. That's Stoic strength. So the next time life throws a storm your way, remember, you are not the storm. You are the sky. You are the stillness beneath it all. I control my emotions. Not because I am cold, but because I am awake. Because I care about who I am becoming. Because I want peace more than I want to win an argument. Because I know power lies not in domination, but in self-command. Repeat that with me. Quietly, firmly, with certainty, I control my emotions, and in doing so, I control my life. You don't need the perfect life. You need the right mindset. Because your greatest battle isn't out there in the world. It's in the quiet spaces of your own mind. It's in what you choose to believe when things fall apart. In how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. And that is where Stoicism lives. Not in theory, not in marble statues or ancient scrolls, but in how you carry yourself through an ordinary Tuesday. In how you rise from a sleepless night, face the mirror and whisper, I am capable. I shape my reality. My path is clear. These 10 affirmations, they aren't just words. They're anchors. They're shields. They're guiding stars for when the sky turns dark. You tell yourself, I grow stronger daily. Because growth isn't loud, it's not flashy. It's often invisible, until one day you're standing taller than your fear. You remind yourself, I commit to excellence. Because the world might settle for mediocrity, but you don't. Not because you're chasing applause, but because you're honoring your own potential. You whisper, excuses do not define me. Because reasons are easy. Action is rare. And the person you want to become is built by what you do, not what you explain. You say, I am designed for greatness, not for ego, but to remind yourself that you were not made to shrink, that inside you, there is something resilient, focused, worthy. And when the world pulls you in every direction, you center yourself again. External opinions do not sway me, because you're not a kite in the wind. You're the mountain, and you return again and again to this moment. I embrace the present. Not the past, not the future, but now. The only place where peace, power, and purpose can actually live. And finally, I control my emotions. Because even in chaos, you can stay calm. Even when provoked, you can stay wise. That's not weakness, that's unshakable self-respect. These 10 reminders, they're not there to impress anyone. They're there to transform you, from reactive to intentional, from scattered to centered, from uncertain to unstoppable. So carry them with you, on your walks, in your car, in your quiet mornings and your hardest nights. Repeat them until they stop sounding like strangers and start sounding like you. Because this isn't just Stoicism. This is how you build a life. One thought, one choice, one breath at a time. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video helped you shift your mindset even a little, I'd be deeply honored if you liked, shared, and subscribed to support the channel. Drop a comment and let me know which affirmation hit home the most. I read every one. And remember, your thoughts shape your world. Let's keep growing together, one mindful day at a time. Stay strong, stay centered, and I'll see you in the next one.